So Steve G got in touch on X yesterday and said, "What the hell are you lot going to talk about for an hour now? I'm expecting stunned silence with nothing but smiles on your faces." Kind of sums it up, really. I mean, we won a game. Steve, it wasn't pretty, but we won a game, and you were there.
Yeah, a win is a win is a win at the end of the day, isn't it? It doesn't kind of matter how it comes about. Good God, that was a terrible game of football. Both teams were absolutely dreadful for the vast majority of that, but I think that kind of suited us in many ways, because Ipswich knew they had to win. That was a game that they would have had circled on the calendar for a long time, building up to it as, right, this is 3 points. This is where we get our potential survival bid back on track after obviously getting their asses handed to them by City, Liverpool, Newcastle, sides like that in recent weeks. And frankly, they didn't really do a lot. I think the situation, I think the kind of expectation of just rolling us over, I just don't think they really knew what to do. And we were for probably the first 25 minutes, half an hour, we were relatively comfortable, and took the lead with, I think it was our first shot on or off target. I mean, we spoke last week, didn't we, about how bad Muric has been for Ipswich, and he'd lost his place in the team. And Christian Walton got injured either last week or during training this week, and Muric is back in the team. And 25 minutes in, somehow he's let one through his hands for Aribo to give us the lead, which was nice of him. And then, I mean, we kind of let them run through the middle of us a little bit for about 10. There was a 10-minute spell there where Liam Delap just bullied the hell out of Bednarek, and we let him and Enciso just run right through the centre, and Broadhead as well. And it was, we were a little bit fortunate that Ipswich only managed to score once, I think, in that little spell. But then once we got over that, we were kind of keeping them at arm's length. It was just a turgid game of football that wasn't really going anywhere. They had a lot of the ball, but a lot like game. There were a few games that we had last season where we struggled to break down sort of teams who played a low block and were quite happy to defend and try and play on the break. And I think Ipswich kind of felt probably that was the situation they were in, because we were sat fairly deep. The only outlet was lumping it into the sky and hoping that Amo-Ameyaw could do something miraculous with it, which for the most part he couldn't, because nobody was within 20 yards of him for even if he did win anything. That was kind of the only frustrating thing, really, that as an attacking outlet we didn't really do an awful lot against a side who are as bad defensively as we are, really. But we kept him at arm's length. I think Ramsdale's only really had probably one good save to make in the first half, and then one at his feet, which you would expect him to make in the second. And then obviously the substitutions for once changed the game in our favour, because suddenly Sulemana on our left flank is pushing Tuanzebe back. It means that he's ended as an attacking force. And suddenly they've got something to think about at the other end. And obviously it's Sulemana who cuts in and hits the shot at the near post. Actually, it's a really good save by Muric, and he's a little bit unlucky that Amo-Ameyaw's just the quickest to react. I mean, Tall Paul looked absolutely knackered, like 65, 70 minutes into that game. You just thought, well, surely Muric is probably going to bring Adam Armstrong on just for fresh legs, if nothing else. But he kept him on, and obviously it's paid off, because he managed to find that little bit of energy to react quicker than Greaves, I think it was, that he was alongside, and pokes it in, and some fine limbs. I've got a little bit of a cut on my shin from
the shins,
whacking the seat in front of me.
Well, having left early before, you were finally in the stadium when Tall Paul scored.
Yes, I've seen the goal that he scored, and of course it actually mattered. It was still very much a live game at that point. So that was good fun. I mean, speaking to a mate of mine who's a Ipswich season ticket holder afterwards, I mean, he basically just said, "I'm just done with football for the season. It's just grim." And I mean, we can all fully kind of appreciate the position he's coming from, because that's what we've been saying for the last 3, 4, 5 months, isn't it? It's when you're down there and you're not getting results, even against teams you think that you should be able to beat. It's really grim, and it's not fun for anybody. And you kind of think, well, why did we go to all that effort last season to be good, only to then come up and find ourselves getting turned over every week? It's not fun, but that is the game these days, unfortunately.
Well, it looks like we'll be playing them again next season anyway. Alfie, you'd written this week about how it was kind of a key game, just for sort of self-belief, really, wasn't it? And confidence, and obviously the manager wanting to get a win. How did it all play out for you? Steve said it wasn't an enjoyable game, but we got the win.
Yeah, I think the sort of the main point in the article I was sort of trying to make was that I felt it was an important week, just in the sense of the manager obviously wants to be here next season. The club want the managers to be here next season, so they say. And to do that, you need a bit of buy-in from the players, and you only really get, and from the fans as well. And you only really get that if you get results. Excuse me, I've just had my dinner. I'm trying to choke to death to it. You might have seen I've been coughing a few times.
Is it nice?
It was nice, but I don't want it anymore. I'm finished with it now. I'm still up. Yeah, it wasn't an amazing game. I must admit, for the first half, I was really worried, actually. For the first sort of 20 minutes, particularly, tactically, this was the most sort of aggressive man-to-man I felt we'd seen. I know Steve pointed out in a game quite recently, but I felt that they really went for it this time.
The other one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they've had a few more weeks on the training ground now, so maybe they feel a bit more confident with it. But Kieran McKenna clearly prepared for that as well, because, I mean, Nathan Broadhead on the left, I mean, he missed all of his chances, thankfully. But he was dragging players like James Bree and a little bit of Jan Bednarek with Liam Delapozel all over the pitch. And, you see that with the goal as well, the fact that the three centre-backs are in a vertical line up the pitch, basically, because they're just following their man. And I was a bit worried about it, and they looked quicker, they looked sharper. But what they did do is Saints hung in there, and they got a really important result. And Steve mentioned the limbs. From where I was sat, like directly opposite it, the limbs were amazing. I'm so jealous to be so far away from it. But it's an important result for me in terms of just that bit of buy-in, that bit of belief. And look, I mean, they're still 7 or 8 points off. So I don't know how much it changes in terms of the table. But I've said all sort of season that I didn't think the Derby record was going to be broken, because eventually 11v11, you're going to win a game of football. And if you're going to win a game, Ipswich away was the one to do it, because they were low on confidence. They're almost as bad as Southampton. So yeah, they did all right.
They will be panicking on the streets of Derby, though, won't they?
Well, they must. I think they've got to accept now that I feel confident that some of them we're going to surpass that now. I know there's not too many of those sort of winnable games left in theory, but I think that they are improving a little bit.
Draws, even get 3 draws.
Exactly. Yeah, they are improving, and I was pleased with the way they hung in there, and obviously for Paul to get that moment, really good. But yeah, some interesting decisions. I mean, I did not expect Joe Rebo to be playing left centre back for the last 35 minutes of the game. I mean, I really did not expect that.
Mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing, yeah. It's mind-blowing. I mean, even if you had to put one of those midfielders back there, Leslie would have been my first thought. It wouldn't have been Joe. But credit to him, he scored the goal in the first half. He did pretty good, exactly. He did his job.
Yeah.
And Ivan can come out of that with some credit, I guess, because if you make a big decision and it goes well, then you get it. But, I mean, I asked him about Amo-Ameyaw, obviously, who's on the bench. Nathan Wood's injured. Jack Stevens obviously went off. Taylor went off with a bit of an injury as well. But I asked about Bella-Kotchap, and he just said his reason was I see him as a central centre-back, or on the right, not on the left. But I don't know. It just, I'm sure he's not really, he's quite an honest person, but I don't know. That just feels a bit, not sure.
Well, Paul in New Zealand emailed about that. He said, a win at last, but what is the point of Bella-Kotchap being on the bench if you don't bring him on when you have 2 centre-backs that are injured? So, I mean, we've kind of addressed that. But yeah, I honestly felt the same as you. If it wasn't that excuse, then maybe it'd be why he doesn't like playing away games. He just wants to play home games. He doesn't suit the yellow kit. He's better at home. There always seems to be some reason for him not coming on. And I wonder when we get onto the FA Cup game, whether we might see him get some minutes at the weekend. But yeah, who knows? Glen, it was our first Premier League away win in 20 games, almost 2 years. Obviously, still last on Match of the Day, which tells you all you need to know about that game. Yeah. But what are you going to be taking away from this?
I think just the fact that we hung in there, and we got the job done. It was 2 poor sides. Let's be honest about that. They're bottom. Us and them. We're the bottom two teams in the league for a reason, and you can kind of see it. But I thought we looked, reasonably competent, which doesn't sound like much of a compliment, but we looked okay. We haven't looked okay. We haven't looked like a functioning team in many games this season, and I thought yesterday we did. I mean, there's always, you go back through any season, there's always games where both teams are kind of rubbish, and the team that sort of toughs it out more tends to, or just has that little bit of quality. I mean, the difference for us was Sulemana coming on, as Steve said. Twanzebe, I think, I've always thought he was poor defensively, but he was having a relatively decent game because no one was putting him under pressure. And all of a sudden, he's got Sulemana against him. And again, I've got to praise Sulemana for he's got one thing he does, and he hasn't done it for 2 years while he's been with us. He just gets the ball and runs at the defenders, and they are terrified of him. And as long as he can keep doing that, so the goal came from him running at Twanzebe and Morsey, neither of whom looked remotely comfortable. And it's an interesting thing on Muric on the second goal. I think yes, it was a half decent save because he'd moved too far towards the middle of his goal. He had to dive back towards the near post to stop it, and I just think he left himself positionally. I just thought, he's a couple of feet too far towards the middle of the goal, and pushing it sort of straight back out. So no, it was good stuff. There was some mad stuff in there. I mean, the structure, the defensive structure. I mean, I think it was Alfie touched on it about we're going man for man at certain times. So when Joe Aribo did go back to left-sided centre back, you're kind of expecting him to be in that channel, and then he turns up on the right, and I don't know where James Bree is, and Bednarek's kind of in midfield, and you just think, what on earth are they doing here? But if you're going man for man, then there are inevitably going to be times where you do get dragged into areas that are not necessarily your channel. But so that it looked a bit hairy at times at the back.
It's not something we've seen much of that, have we? I don't think
it's not something we tend to do in England. In British, English teams don't tend to
more like the zonal stuff,
play that way. Yeah, you tend to stay in your channel and pick up whatever player comes into it. But I mean, obviously some teams go man for man on set pieces and things like that. But even that's become less fashionable these days, isn't it? Now it's teams tend to be sort of like zonal with blockers and stuff at set pieces. So there's Juric is bringing some interesting sort of like things to the party. I'm be interested to see how it works sort of like going forward when teams realise that we are going to do that, because I think we're possibly taking teams by surprise a little bit with the way we're defending. I think it suits our guys more to be aggressive in their defending. And be sort of like right up behind the strikers. But you mentioned Taylor Harwood-Bellis. He was shocking yesterday from the first minute. I can't stand it when players start moaning at their teammates to cover up for their mistakes. So in the first couple of minutes, he passed the ball straight out of play and had a go at the player who was nearest to the imaginary player he tried to pass to, which happened to be Wellington, who was making his debut. And it's like, he doesn't need that in the first couple of minutes from a player who's been here for a year and a half, plays for England and all that stuff. And he just carried on with that. He pinged a horrible pass into Joe Aribo when it was a real hospital job, where he had two players behind him and he couldn't control it. And he was waving his arms around and stuff like that. And when he went down on 44 minutes, I thought, he went down, it's the classic, no one near him. And Taylor Harwood-Bellis, I've always thought he's got an excellent attitude usually. And I just looked at that and thought, he don't fancy it today. And it was no surprise to me whatsoever that he went off at half time.
I think for me, it was like shades of the first few weeks of the season, Glenn, where you could sort of see that he was tapped into the Premier League. But I mean, as a character, he for the interest of transparency, I described him as something along the lines of a hothead or something in our chat. Just in the sense that he does seem to sort of lose his head in moments, and like you say, whether that's with himself a lot of the time, with mistakes he's made or whatever it is. But that same sort of passion, I suppose, is probably what has driven him to this point as a player, and as the reason he's a professional.
But
he's really into it, but he's got to manage it. He's got to manage.
Yeah, but that's fine. But don't have a go at your teammates if you've made a mistake. That's terrific, because that just does no good to anybody. It just winds me up. Can't imagine his future father-in-law would be very impressed with that kind of behaviour.
It was part of the reason why I was a bit worried in that first half, because he wasn't the only one. There was, I think Leslie put a couple of balls out of play for no reason as well. I was thinking it's a little bit sloppy
off the pace.
Yeah.
He got better second half.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for most of the individuals, it was generally a case of they were either decent in the first half or decent in the second half. I thought Grönbeck looked quite lively first 20 minutes. Had a couple of shots from the edge of the area that were blocked. Both of them looked on target. So at least he's a guy that's willing to take a shot from outside the box. So that's always a positive. Other than that, wasn't involved a huge amount. But we didn't really see an awful lot of the ball first half, really, other than kind of passing it around the back and sort of through the first stages of midfield. Wellington, I thought, looked excellent.
It was really good.
I mean,
really good.
It did. I assume it was only cramp that saw him taken off with about 15 minutes to go. He stretched
into a tackle, and it was just one of those ones where you could tell he hit the deck after the tackle and he wasn't getting up. You could just tell it was like all the air left his body in one go. It's like, I can't do this anymore.
Maybe a little bit lucky he did it then, really, because I mean, Tyler Dibbling was stripped ready to go as the fish substitute about to come on the touchline. I mean, had he done it a minute later, we could have been playing with a Wellington with one leg for the rest of the game, basically. I
mean, the substitution we've touched on it. The putting Aribo back in defence. It was strange because, I mean, I don't understand Will Smallbone. I don't understand his role in a Premier League team. I really don't, because he doesn't get tackles in. He doesn't get about the park to put pressure on players. When the opposition have got the ball, he's kind of a passenger. When we've got the ball, he only gets it when someone gives it to him simple, sort of thing. So I didn't understand that substitution. We kind of got away with it because Aribo adapted really well. And the other substitution that did work really well was bringing Lallana on for the last 10 minutes, which is exactly what we signed him for. To
boss
play
the game.
The last 10, 15 minutes and see out games or whatever it is that we needed to do. And it was just remarkable noticing the amount of sort of like jockeying of other players, getting them to move up the pitch. If you look at the second goal again, I mean, obviously we're probably not thinking in terms of getting another goal, but he's moving everybody up the pitch, and
he's the other guy in the box at the time.
Yeah, but he just looked, obviously he's class, but his legs are gone, and he can't play for very, very, very much these days. But that is exactly how we should be using him, and that was a noticeable little thing at the end of the game, because on the end of the day, I didn't understand taking Leslie off at that stage, bearing in mind he's this sort of like big, strong guy in midfield. And we've ended up with a central midfield of Lallana and Smallbone. And, to me, on paper, that's terrifying. But we kind of got away with it, I feel. But I don't think that will work very often, to be honest.
Part of the reason that did work was because Ipswich took off Kajust in midfield, who, by the sound of it, basically only ever plays 60 to 70 minutes. And nobody can quite fathom why he's not at least why they're not trying to get him to play more of the game, because he seems to be really important to the way that they play him. I mean, we know that Morsey's an old workhorse who just kind of sits there, doesn't really move around an awful lot. So that he can probably do 90 minutes, but he's not mobile. Whereas Kajust is the guy that's a little bit more dynamic. And they didn't bring Calvin Phillips on, which I found, I mean, if you're not going to, I mean, you've got a guy that you're paying 70 grand a week to, who's their highest paid player, and not even getting minutes in a game like this is madness.
not working out for him, is it? Just want to get your thoughts on the injuries, Alfie, just so where we're at. You've got a feel for Jack Stevens, obviously coming on and then having to go straight off again. Harwood-Bellis, I think we mentioned, going off at half time as well. So there's a few concerns there maybe going forward.
Yeah, Harwood-Bellis, I think the verdict was an ankle injury of some sort, but I don't know how severe that is. I don't know if it's a case of he'll be back next week or not. I'm not sure. Jack, they're obviously, well, yeah. They're obviously, they're obviously worried about Jack because it's a continuation, I guess, of what's kept them out since sort of mid-December, and not the red cards, the injury that he suffered in training. I get the impression that he was rushed back a little bit in the sense that Ivan Juric said before the game that he's done 2 training sessions and he'd come through them well, and this isn't normal. I'm really impressed with Jack, all this kind of thing. So then be on the bench, and obviously the intention wasn't for him to do 45 minutes. Presumably it was only when Taylor required to come off. The fact he's only lasted 10, you've got to feel for him. I know that obviously he's got his critics and whatnot. And who else went off? I mean, obviously Cameron Archer wasn't in the squad at all. He has got a bit of a groin injury. Obviously, Leeds United want to sign him. As far as I understand it, nothing's progressed. Certainly as of this morning, Saints have rejected whatever has come in for him. But I mean, there's a very real possibility that they spend the money and they get him. Who knows? But I think his absence was genuine. And Flynn Downs is a little bit interesting, isn't it? Based on what Ivan Juric said after the match.
Wow. So before the match, we thought he might have been injured because he missed a couple of sessions. But
no, they never said that he missed sessions for injury. They just said he missed a couple of sessions. Cam Archer missed a couple of sessions for injury. Flynn Downs missed a couple of sessions for an undescribed reason, not given reason. And then Ivan Juric, after the match, was asked about him. He said exactly that. He missed a couple of sessions and today did not play. And then we had some problems in the week. And then someone said, "Oh, some problems," and he went, "I think I've said enough." So you can do with that what you will.
Interesting. I've got absolutely no idea what that may or may not be.
Well, look, the obvious reading between the lines is that he hasn't played much, has he? Since Ivan's come in, he's had a couple of games where he's done well, had a couple of games where he hasn't done so well.
Yeah,
obviously it was a Russell Martin signing, so who knows? Maybe there's obviously
conversations going on.
Yeah, there's a day left of the window. I think that I think the club are pretty confident that he'll still be here, but just maybe while that window's not shut, maybe it's a bit different.
Interesting. We need to do player of the week and stuff. Anything else on Ipswich? Anything else that we've missed, Steve, from the game?
No, I can't think. Not that I could think of. No, I mean, slight concern of how sort of badly Bednarek got beaten up basically by a teenager. For the vast majority of that 90 minutes.
That was always going to be one of the key battles, wasn't it? What was going to
happen? We rather got away with it.
He's a big kid, though, isn't he, Steve? He might be 21, but huge.
He is, but I mean, given that he was utterly anonymous in the reverse game at St Mary's, the difference is palpable, and that was slightly concerning. But and obviously at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's interesting from the way we're defending. That's right. We're going for this man-to-man thing, basically. So Bednarek is up against him the whole game. Whereas in the normal scenario, if you've got a centre forward, then one goes up close and one goes behind, and the centre forward might, unless his touch is spot on or the ball up to him is spot on, then he's going to have a problem because he'll be playing against 2 players. When you're basically going 1v1. I think there's more scope for the centre back to get battered around like that. Bednarek, did he get booked in the end? He was very fortunate. There was an advantage played after Bednarek had absolutely hammered him. I thought he did okay. There was one horrible bit of defending by Bednarek at the end of the first half, where obviously there was a lack of communication between him and Ramsdale, where he ended up sort of like just plopping the ball down on the edge of the 6-yard box, and we got away with it. Someone got a boot to it, but yeah, it was. I think if you go 1-to-1 all over the defence, then there are going to be more hairy moments than there are when you obviously outnumber and cover and stuff like that. But that's the way the manager wants to do it, so we'll have to get used to it.
Let's do player of the week then. Fernandez won last week. That's the 4th time for him. I think that's the most, maybe him and Dibbling at the moment, but that was the 4th time for him this season. Who are we going to kick off with, Glenn? Are you going to put Joe Aribo forward first?
Yeah, I'd say. I thought he was our best midfielder when he was
matter,
there.
didn't it? Going forward, defending in midfield, he was
scored the goal. He was our best midfielder, and he was probably our best defender when he went back there as well. And I love the little action right at the end of the game where it's 97 minutes and you're all waiting for the inevitable ball into the box, and he's like a lunatic up the left wing, winning 2 tackles and then getting fouled, and then the final whistle goes. And I kind of think that was his game yesterday. I thought he had a really good game. I mean, I question him starting virtually every week because he can be a little bit up. He can be a little bit up and down, can't he? But he's having more good. He's having more good games than bad ones at the moment.
Definitely.
And in the context of this season, that's not bad. And I mean,
is he top scorer in the league now?
He is.
Yeah, he is.
That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
I mean, Flynn Downs is it will be coming for his place in the team, you would have thought, but at the moment it's certainly not a foregone conclusion that he'll take it off him. So yeah, I'd say Joe Aribo, and he won't be top scorer this season. Tor Paul will get about 15. You watch.
Well, yeah. Any other nominations, Steve? Alfie, player of the week. Who else stood out for you?
Yeah, I'm gonna throw Wellington into the mix.
Okay.
Just a bit of, obviously we've now got proper balance there. I mean, Ryan Manning, as I've said a fair few times on here over the last couple of months, has exceeded the very low expectations that pretty much everybody had of him. But you can see the huge difference in when you've got somebody with a bit more sort of top level quality and nous about them. And Wellington certainly has that. He's obviously quick, gets down the wing, and the thing that was absolutely fascinating was his absolute determination to swing across into the box at the first time of asking. Didn't ever want to get closer to the penalty area. He was quite happy swinging across into the box from 40 yards back or 15, 20. Didn't matter. The ball was going into the box, which, I mean, given that there was only ever one player in there at the time, isn't ideal in a game like today. You probably want a few more targets in there, but
small steps, right? Small steps.
Yeah, absolutely. but also the way that those balls were delivered, they were delivered with pace and sort of dip on them, and those are the ones that are difficult to defend against. And if you can just kind of get the accuracy a little bit more improved, then yeah, that's going to be a huge weapon for us, I think.
So we do Wellington, Aribo, and Alfie gone.
Yeah, well, just on Wellington as well. I mean, I watched him play 45 minutes for the 21s 2 weeks ago, and you don't see a lot about a player in 45 minutes for the 21s for obvious reasons. But one of the things that I did see quite clearly was he loves getting stuck into tackles, and he doesn't shirk them. He stays in them and he gets into them. And I was just wondering, is it a case of he's just bullying children here, or will he bring that into the Premier League? And he really did. He really did. One bad tackle he got booked for, to be fair. But yeah, I was actually really impressed by that side of the game as well as what Steve was mentioning going forward.
Did you see Omari Hutchison much? He put like one cross in. Wellington. He ran at Wellington twice in the first sort of 5 minutes. Both times block tackle, come away with the ball, get out of here. And I was impressed with his defending and the going forward stuff. Once he's been here a while, if it's Amo-Ameyaw up front, he'll get used to Wellington and when he wants to deliver the ball. And as a player who's obviously going to thrive off crosses, that's only going to improve. And you can see Wellington playing every game from here on in. There's no way if he can keep to that level. Obviously, might be fitness issues while he gets used to the Premier League, but he will stay in the team. And those relationships with the players around him, and in particularly the forwards coming in from the other side, will only improve.
We should probably put Amo-Ameyaw on the poll as well, really.
Yeah, the only other players I was going to say is Paul for the goal, I guess. Even though, I mean, I think every single first touch he took in the first half went about 10 yards away from him. But also Ramsdale made maybe one or two big saves as well. It's probably worth chucking him in.
There we go.
There was a particular good one, a double save on, might have been Broadhead at the near post in the first half.
Ramsdale for the knee slide, because we haven't seen one of those for a while. And
did he injure himself doing that, by the way? Because he
did
was
he?
struggling with his hip for the rest of the game. It looked
I
like.
didn't see that bit.
He went tumbling over, but
oh, amazing. And Ono actually, because he scored the winner away from home, and we've not been able to say that for ages and ages.